In my video, A Cure for a Dysfunctional Society, I make the claim that my upcoming book will solve a lot of social problems, everything from depression, addiction, Alzheimer's, arthritis, high blood pressure, to solving homelessness and financial distress, and even how to survive a social collapse. These are pretty outrageous claims, but know that this is not entirely my own invention. I have drawn on a lot of resources. I've done a lot of research, a ton of research that I wish I could cite to you quickly, but I can't. It'll be in the bibliography of the book. So instead, what I've done is I put together a quick montage of people speaking about the need for community and mutual aid. And these people range from experts and with PhDs in their fields, all the way to just your average, ordinary people like you and me. All of them understand the need for community as a way of getting through these times that we're in now. So don't just take my word for it. Listen to these people. They will confirm everything I said in my video, A Cure for a Dysfunctional Society. They will back up my claims that community is the solution for most of our problems.
So how can we address social isolation in social policy, clinical practice, and health research, and even in our own personal lives? Here are a few recommendations. In terms of policy, we need to develop communities that foster and support building strong social ties, as opposed to creating social barriers that might inhibit the development of ties.
The prevalence of loneliness is also on the rise. In the 1980s, scholars estimated that about 20% of Americans felt lonely at any given point in time. Two recent nationally representative surveys indicate that this number has doubled. But you don't hear people talking about feeling lonely. And that's because loneliness is stigmatized. The psychological equivalent of being a loser in life or a weak person. And this is truly unfortunate because it means we're more likely to deny feeling lonely, which makes no more sense than denying we feel hunger, thirst, or pain. For living with loneliness, we now know is a major risk factor for broad-based morbidity and mortality. Consider a couple of the conditions we know about premature death. Living with air pollution increases your odds of an early death by 5%. Living with obesity, we know a national health problem, increases your odds of an early death by 20%. Excessive alcohol consumption, 30%. A recent meta-analysis of over 100,000 participants shows that living with loneliness increases your odds of an early death by 45%.
There is research that shows that we are more likely to live longer and healthier lives if we have good friends. And if we have a health challenge, there's research that shows, contrary to what you would think, more than with a spouse, having a good friend helps us heal and faster.
I'm going to put it for you as pithily as I can. We were never designed. We were never designed for this. We were never designed for the sedentary, indoor, socially isolated, sleep-deprived, fast food-laden, frenzied pace of modern life. The result? An epidemic of depressive illness. We are designed as a very social species. We're designed to connect. Did you know that FaceTime, time in the physical presence of our loved ones, actually puts the brakes on our stress response? Did you know that our ancestors spent all day, every day in the company of their loved ones, their friends? Think about the extensive FaceTime they shared with the people that matter most. And what have we done? We've traded FaceTime for screen time. FaceTime for Facebook. Is that better? And the result is devastating. The result is devastating. We're born to connect. We need that connection In our treatment protocol, we work very, very hard to help each depressed individual resist the urge to withdraw, because when you're ill, your body tells you to shut down and pull away. When you're physically ill with the flu, that's adaptive. When you have clinical depression, it's the worst thing in the world you can do, even though every fiber of your being is telling you exactly the opposite. We've got lots of good data on our outcomes, and as I've said, they've exceeded our wildest expectations. Most of the patients that have come to us have tried meds, and they haven't gotten well. Most of them have tried traditional therapy, and it hasn't been the answer. The majority have gotten well as they've been willing to change the way they live. We had a man a year and a half ago who had been fighting depression for 41 years consecutively. And it was one of the happiest days of my life when he came into a session after 14 weeks, and he looked around the room with tears in his eyes and said, "This is what I remembered it felt like to be free." It can happen.
It was the late, great food writer Marion Cunningham who coined the phrase, the modern tribal fire. Modern tribal fire. As a species, we sit together, we break bread, we eat, we share sustenance, and it nurtures not only our bellies and our hearts, but our spirits and our souls. We are hardwired for this. This has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. Open up any food magazine, watch any cooking show on television, click on any food blog, and what you will see supports the concept of the modern tribal fire. There were beautiful people sitting together, breaking bread, dining, cooking together, drinking wine, enjoying each other. There might be a child involved learning how to stir a pot at his mother's elbow. There might be a kid in a school garden planting vegetables to learn how to cook for his classmates. But what you will never see anywhere are senior citizens. Do they not also have a seat at the modern tribal fire? Don't they have a seat? Studies have shown repeatedly that senior citizens who are isolated from their communities of origin, from their families, like my grandmother was, and from their tribes, suffer at higher rates of illness. They succumb to long-term diseases faster. They suffer from high blood pressure. They suffer from greater rates of cognitive decline and dementia. It is this community that I'm talking about, this modern tribal fire, that is an absolute necessity for senior citizens, especially senior citizens who are suffering the scourge of isolation. And right now, in America right now, we have almost 50 million senior citizens from 65 on up. So we're talking about a potential epidemic of isolation and all that means for physical health, mental health, emotional health.
Our evolutionary advantage is our brain and our ability to communicate, plan, reason, and work together. Our survival depends on our collective abilities, not on our individual might.
And the last item that plays such a powerful role in our communities and our families, the best science of the 21st century is now telling us the fundamental rule of nature. It's not based on competition and conflict, it's based on cooperation and mutual aid. What I want you to see right now is that we are living a new world. We are moving from the false assumptions to the new discoveries. We are moving from a world of separation and thinking of ourselves as separate from our bodies and our world to a world of connection, We're moving from a world of competition and conflict that is no longer sustainable, is not helping us to solve the problems in our bodies or the world beyond our bodies, into a world of cooperation and mutual aid. The reason I'm saying this, if you find yourself in a place where the old ideas of what you and I were taught no longer work, and they can't solve the problems that you're facing in life, I'm going to invite you to let them go, come to the new discoveries, the discoveries of cooperation and mutual aid. And I think you'll be surprised at how well these ideas are adapted in everything from the economy to medicine to natural healing and the healing of our bodies. And that's what I want to talk about now.
And that we respect each other, and that we do something positive for the world, you know. That's where freedom is. I mean, we don't have to do any of this, you know, but the fact that we don't respect each other enough to stand together, there's no common unity and community. That's the problem. You know, that's where the solution is. You know, you look at that, what we could achieve through a united community. Well, you can see why they keep us so divided. You know, it's the whole crux of the thing, you know.
But have a community, have friendships, keep your relationships going, know people, develop your skill sets. You know, I mean, we all look for isolated solutions, like, you know, how can I accumulate enough stuff that I'm going to be immune from social troubles? But social troubles are eased by having a community. That's why it's so great that people are here. You can meet each other, like exchange phone numbers, exchange cards, stay in touch, have a community. Even if it's a decentralized community, have people you know who, in times of trouble, you can rely on. Develop your relationships. Yeah, have the other stuff, that's important, but have your friendships, have your community, however you can get it. That's really important, I think.
In later years, Bookchin changed his mind about libertarians of our sort, and about various other things as well. He even stopped calling himself an anarchist. But however he characterized his political views at the time of his death nearly 5 years ago in late July of 2006, his work in the middle years of the 20th century stands on its own, and the essence of that work was the updating and further popularization of an idea traceable to Peter Kropotkin, the idea that if human beings are freed from the burden of the state, they will naturally find a way to live peaceably together. They will create a spontaneous order and live in it harmoniously. The idea remains an enticing one.
Because there was originally in the West these things called friendly societies where you paid in your dues and you got great stuff out of it. Like you worked and you paid. It was kind of like a union, but it was voluntary, and it encompassed things like the provision of health care and unemployment insurance and old age insurance and just accidental death and dismemberment insurance and injury insurance. So you paid into it, and if something bad happened, you got out of it. And it was an amazing system. It was about 100 years ago, like the Shriners and these lodges and so on, like the dim echoes of all this kind of stuff. It was an amazing system. And for 1 day's wages, you got access to a doctor for 365 days of the year. And that's one of the reasons why doctors hated it, is it drove down what they wanted to charge for people. So this system wherein you paid into sort of social insurance and then you got security out of it was a great system. Now, then it was killed by regulations, it was killed by the government, and it was finally displaced by the welfare state.
Our mutual aid societies are an integral part of Tampa's rich cultural and ethnic diversity that has made our community so unique and contributed to its greatness. They were never socialized medicine. That was the negative title and publicity given the mutual aid societies by the medical society, both locally and nationally. They felt threatened by the concept of cooperative medicine, also called mutualism. Socialized medicine is government-owned and operated with taxpayer dollars. The taxpayer is required and obligated to accept subscription to a government-run national health care. Our mutual aid societies here in Tampa were purely voluntary and totally private money, more like an insurance company. Each member paid weekly or monthly dues, such as $1.50 per month. These organizations were totally locally owned and operated and controlled by its membership with their private funds and pledges, like civic clubs, country clubs, lodges, fraternities, and sororities. In fact, mutual aid societies were much more than health care organizations. They were centers for recreation, sports clubs, education, music, and culture, socializing, networking, as well as comfort and support during hard times and bereavements. The Tampa Mutual Aid Societies serve their membership from cradle to grave. In healthcare, they provided hospitals, walk-in clinics, physicians, nurses, medicines, maternity ward, long-term care, and also cemeteries. Our Tampa Mutual Aid Societies were organized with corporate charters, rules and regulations, and annually elected their presidents and board of directors according to the needs and wishes of their membership and the challenges of the day. The buildings, hospitals, and cemeteries were privately owned. The federal and state governments were not involved.
You've got to get together to strategize, to meet, to, personal networking, build relationships eyeball to eyeball. I'm sorry, but all the social media stuff that's come up in the last 15, 20 years, this has destroyed our country and our ability to relate to people. You've got to start getting together with people face to face and dealing with these issues. And so, 5 people could make such a difference if they're coordinated and they know each other and they plan stuff out. 5 people can make a difference in any city on any issue. I've seen it happen. It's just, you got to get together and do it.
The difference between charity and mutual aid in a disaster situation is charities like the Red Cross, they're set up along very specific lines. They have CEOs, they have vice presidents of communication, they have all of these different levels in their hierarchy, and as you go up, each level is more authoritarian than the one before it. So in order to make any decisions, in order to do anything, things have to follow a very specific set of rules, they have to be done in a certain way, and if you try to contravene those rules, then you get booted out of the organization. From Katrina to Haiti to Houston, they cause the same problems over and over again because their structures are inflexible. We get to pick and choose what we want to do. And in picking and choosing what we want to do, we let the community who needs the work done direct us. Mutual aid just recognizes that we're all in different places and we have to meet each other where we are in order to keep moving forward.
We've been creating affinity groups like medical crews, organizing short-term infrastructure like solar and water purification, and then we have a long-term systems group that's coming in after. We've been in contact with folks from Houston and Louisiana and Mexico who've been, organizing that same structure.
In Lakewood, what happened during the storm was almost criminal. They were told they were not in a flood zone, they were not priority evacuation, and as the water started to rise from the bayou that encircles the neighborhood, they started calling for rescue and they couldn't get any. So they helped themselves. They found boats. Some neighbors went around rescuing folks off their roofs, and the community took care of itself. They have always been a tight-knit community, and now that they've gone through this together, they're even closer knit.
I think organizing around short-term and long-term relief for people has really helped to demonstrate how communities can do the work themselves and render the state unnecessary. That vision of community, mutual aid, horizontal organization, and solidarity is like coming to life with people.
And I'm Sissy Sue, and we're the Hillbilly Prepper Gals. That's right, all day long, folks. And today, what are we talking about today, Sissy? Mutual aid, Sissy. And I'm telling you what, folks, mutual aid, that is a very, very important one that I think everybody should have. Yeah. On Sissy's list, it had how many, 25? 25 things needed during the top of during a national emergency, but you know what? We should have made it 26 because a mutual aid group is not just beneficial, it is a necessity. It really is. Whether you're leaving, if you're bugging out, if you're bugging in, if you're bugging whatever, you're going to have a mutual aid group. Because you can't do it by yourself. No, you sure can't, especially when you got acreage and property, and if you want to survive. Absolutely. And I tell you what, if it was just Paul, Sissy Sue, and Jonathan, Bob, and me, I'd be washing, cooking, cleaning, and and garden 24 hours a day. Everything that shit's good for, folks. But sorry. Another thing is too, you can only have so much Red Bull. Eventually, you're gonna have to close your eyes and go to sleep. I know. And when you go to sleep, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, sissy. That's right. And ain't nobody. That's superhuman. Human. So mutual aid is a good. What did you say it was earlier? Well, it's not. I was gonna say it's not like stock and bonds. It's not really an investment, but it really is an investment. It is an investment. It is an investment. It's an investment into people, and it's an investment of your time.
And somebody yesterday was telling me that I'm not going my own way at all. That I'm just doing what men have done. Thousands of men have done before me. Yeah, you're right. This is exactly what humans do and have been ever since the dawn of evolution. When we became human, that's in our genetic code. That's what we do. At the end of the day, we form mutual aid societies. A case in point is Greece, for example. Okay, their economy's pretty much totally collapsed, and what's happened there is people haven't sat around grumbling and complaining about the fact that they've been fucked over badly. No, what they've done is they've set up mutual aid societies. So, they've found ways to trade and get around the currency. They've created their own currencies. They've done their own thing. I'm sure it's not popular with the powers to be, the government and what have you. But that's what ordinary people do when a society collapses. In one form or one way or another, they actually set up mutual aid societies. It's just a natural thing. I'm doing no differently to what the Greeks did or are doing, and I'm sure any number of other people are doing. All right, it tends to be an autonomous thing. There's no government involved. There's no sort of recognised power. If you like, I'm setting up an alternative society, which is what the Greeks are doing. They're setting up an alternative economy. They're saying, well, fuck you. If you don't want to try and listen to us and help us out, well, fuck you. And that's what I'm saying. Well, fuck you. If you want to run your society like that, then fuck you. I'll set up my own. I don't care if it's just me and another person. I don't really give a shit. A mutual aid society can be just two people.
I like communitarian because I want a community. The ancient Greeks had a wonderful proverb which said, one man, no man, which is completely opposite to the ideology that has permeated our Anglo-Saxon folk in America, where the idea of wanting to live where you can't see the smoke from your neighbor's window and on this chimney and all this sort of thing. Without a community, a human is nothing. No man is an island. We all stand upon the shoulders of generations and generations of people. And you do owe back to your community. From those to whom much has been given, much shall be required. Leadership is required to pay back to the community. Those who have resources in a healthy society consider the interests of their own people.